9th. The order, please. Gavin, will you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mary, roll call.
Keith Guidry.
Here.
Gavin Colley.
Here.
Roland Curol.
Here.
Mitch Danos. Brett DeRoche.
Here.
Scott Terrio.
Here.
Brian Moritz.
Here.
McNamee Rome.
Here.
Monty Bates.
Here.
Mr. President, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. Okay, gentlemen, you've been presented the minutes of last month's meeting. Need a motion by Mac, second by Brett. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Okay, moving on to the president's report. Update on the ALBL conference. I think it went pretty well. A lot of information, and Amy passed on to me if you guys have any receipts that need to be turned in for parking or whatever to get it to her. I think a lot of them will maybe just put in the room. Also, at the end of the year, I'd just like to thank all of you guys, all our engineers and our contractors for the work, the services you provide for us. We rely on you guys a lot, and we truly appreciate it. And also our office staff and our workers out there, please pass on our thanks. Okay.
Hey.
All right, moving on to the executive committee report. Nick?
Sure. So the executive committee met Monday, December 2nd at 1 p.m. The first item, we discussed the upcoming nominations for committees, president and vice president, and those will be discussed at the January board meeting. Then we discussed a quote for a water monitoring system that'll be paid for through the capital outlay funding that we received last year. We are working with our board attorney on an intergovernmental agreement with the Terrebonne Levee District, so that'll be brought up hopefully in January. We also discussed bid results for the emergency winch system at the La Rose floodgate, and that'll be discussed later today's meeting. Also informed the committee of grant approval from Louisiana Office of Community Development for Hurricane Ida cost sharing, and we discussed hiring a grass cutter and also offering another grass cutter position at that meeting. And that was the agenda.
Okay, any questions for that? Okay, anyone here from the audience needs to address the board? Anyone here? Okay, moving on, back to you, Nick, for the executive director report.
Sure, thank you, Mr. President. So first up, the Community Development Block Grant for Hurricane Ida cost share. So following federal disasters, hurricanes and tropical storms, typically for us, the cost share for disaster debris removal is typically up to 30 days. FEMA covers 85% of that cost. From 31 to 90 days, FEMA covers 80% of that cost. And 90 to 180 days, FEMA covers 75% of that cost. And we are responsible for paying the other portion out of pocket. Following Hurricane Ida, President Biden authorized 100% federal cost share for a period, I believe it went up to 45 days. He had an extension there. But then after that, the cost share increased proportionally. And so in the end, our cost share for debris removal came out to $496,103.72 of approved activities. And so we applied for reimbursement for those funds through the Louisiana Office of Community Development's Disaster Recovery Program, and that's funded by the Community Development Block Grant Program through U.S. Housing and Urban Development Department. OCD just approved our application for reimbursement of that cost share, so that's nearly $500,000 we'll be getting back in our pockets to be able to put to levee work in the future. So that's good news for us.
Yep.
Pump Station 4 pump repairs. If y'all remember last month, we talked about pump number 2 having an issue with the impeller. Screws that were holding the pump in place, the bowl system in place, had backed out over time. It caused the bowl to be able to move around, and the impeller inside kept hitting the side of the bowl, damaging it, and then that damaged part just kept getting everything knocked around and got progressively worse. So we ended up pulling that pump that's currently at Bowling Marine in New Orleans. They're performing that repair for us. They've blasted and painted. They're making new shafts while the cast is being made for the new pump. And we anticipate having this whole system back in place by the end of February, early March timeframe. So when that pump went down, we were down from 5 pumps at that station to 4. So then, towards the end of November, pump number 1 had an issue with the gear head, where the tube that feeds the oil to the gears had broken, and that caused the gearhead to start shaking. So we pulled that gearhead, sent it off to Bolin for repairs. It damaged the pinion, and Bolin found damage to the bearing seals and failure of the anti-rotation mechanism. So the quote for that repair came in on November 26th, and it totaled $51,675. Excuse me. It was kind of an emergency need, so I got with board president and put our discretionary approvals together to get that repair rolling. Especially since we already had pump number 2 out now, because that got us down 2 pumps at pump station number 4. So Bolin's currently waiting on parts for that repair, then that'll take about another 2 weeks for a rebuild and a test run. So then we were down to only 3 pumps at number 4. Then last week, pump number 3 had issues with its anti-reverse mechanism not locking in place. So we've got that one being repaired too. So that got us down to only 2 pumps at number 4, which is a pretty critical station. We use it it's one of the ones we use most often, not only because of rainfall and it being at the southern end of the system, but we also have the siphon right there. Anytime we need to lower the bolide really quickly, we use pump station number 4 to draw it down. So internally, our employees were able to pull one gearhead off of pump number 2 that was working and put it on pump number 3. So we're back up to 3 pumps right now. Thankfully, we're in the winter season, typically not having as much rain as the summer, but we're monitoring that. And if it gets, I don't see it getting to the point where we'd need to find some kind of emergency situation. But if so, I'll keep you guys informed on whatever we have to do there. So moving on to any questions on that system? Pump number 2. So the day after our November meeting, we lost power in the morning at pump station number 2. There were electrical issues with the line coming from Entergy's pole to our box on the outside of the pump station, and that caused a power failure and melted the conduit. So while waiting for Entergy to show up for their repairs, we lined up an electrician to get our repairs done and ensure everything was going to be working properly after Entergy did their part. We also worked with the parish permitting office to get an emergency expedited permit because we would need a permit from the parish for Entergy to be able to turn the power back on after the repairs are done. So big thanks to Mr. Tony Bro in the permits department for getting that done pretty quickly. But before Entergy could arrive, around 11:45 in the morning, our employee who was there, because it had rained the day before, and so we were actively pumping at this station. Now the pumps themselves run off diesel. The exhaust fans and the lights and everything run off a generator. So we had generator power going, and the pumps themselves were working fine. But we did have an employee there monitoring everything while the pumps were running. But around 11:45, he heard a little explosion, and so he went outside and saw that Entergy's pole that feeds our station was on fire. And so we called 911, fire department came out, but they couldn't do anything until Entergy de-energized that line. And so they still had to wait for Entergy to get out there. They got out there maybe a little after 1, but the ones that originally came didn't have the equipment they needed to actually replace the pole. So that was closer to 3:30, 4 o'clock before that truck got on site. So our repairs couldn't be done till the next day, but everything is back in place and running. So it was, we have a lot of fires that we put out, but this was a literal fire that we had to deal with, so that was a lot of fun. So the day of our meeting last month, some of our employees were going around and noticed a large dirt pile near the LaRose flood wall under the Highway 308 overpass over the Intracoastal. So I went the next morning to investigate. This was right before all the fire issues at number 2, so that was a fun Tuesday. And so I went out to take pictures. The landowner came out, wondering if they were in trouble, and I tried to very kindly explain, probably, so it turns out the landowner was digging a pond around 6 feet deep, only 12 feet away from the flood wall, because they said the person that they purchased the property from before said, well, yeah, as long as you're within these PVC pipes that mark in the boundary line, you can do whatever you want. So I explained to her that's not correct. And then, you know, the utilities companies came out to mark everything, and they said, oh, well, as long as you stay out of this area, you should be fine. Again, not correct. But so I did let her know that it was likely they were going to have to fill it back in. And so I contacted the Corps of Engineers, so their enforcement division came out the following day, explained to them, look, you can't do this, it's too close to the flood wall. And so they gave them instructions on how to refill it to where it would be compacted correctly. So, yeah. I mean, there was no ill intent, obviously. You know, they just weren't aware. And so I feel like this is a good opportunity to remind the public that, and that was this morning when I passed by, it was filled back in. That any excavation within 1,500 feet of the levee or the flood walls, the Corps of Engineers requires their review and permission. 1,500 feet? Yeah, it's a good ways, but right. But I mean, even a small pond like this, you know, I mean, it could.
Anything within a quarter of a mile.
Should be reviewed by the Corps of Engineers. Yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, even a small pond like this, just 6 feet deep, you know, but close enough that it could undermine the structural integrity of that wall. And then a small pond turns the entire community of Delta Farms into a big pond, inadvertently. So and for anybody who may be watching the recording of this meeting, if you have a question, you're concerned that you might be wanting to dig a pond or any kind of other excavation close to the levee, please contact us. We'll put you in touch with the right people that can give you some feedback on whether or not what you're hoping to do would be fine and not potentially damage our levee system. It was a very eventful Tuesday. And then the last part, the legislative auditor reports. So every year, our auditors that look over our finances before it gets sent to the Louisiana legislative auditor, they typically send us a draft to review and then a final to review before they send it to the legislative auditor. Last year, they ended up having to get an extension, so it's likely that it just kind of slipped through the cracks after the extension. But we never received the final version of last year's financial audit report. So as a formality, we need to have a resolution officially accepting the 2023 financial audit report. There were no findings, so everything was fine.
Okay,
We just need a...
You've heard the recommendation of our general manager to accept the 2023 audit. Moved by Scott, second by Monty. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed.
And then for 2024, we did receive the final report from them, so we also need a separate resolution accepting the 2024 financial audit report. Again, no findings.
Heard the recommendation of our general manager to accept our 2024 financial audit report. Moved by Brian, second by Mr. Rowland. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. And then lastly, we received word from Congressman Graves' office last week that the WRDA bill, the Water Resource Development Act of 2024, has been finalized. So it's now going through the final steps to be voted on. And our request did make it in. It wasn't everything I was hoping for, but it's better than nothing. And the most important part is that, so it's going to give the Corps of Engineers an additional $3 million to do an assessment of our existing conditions. And in talking with the New Orleans district, Dr. Chris Dunn, who's the chief of engineering in New Orleans, he's working internally. Typically, whenever they do geotechnical investigations, which I'm going to assume the geotech group in New Orleans is going to want to see before signing off on our after-the-fact Section 408 permits, because everything that we show them, they still have questions about, well, yeah, but what is it now? What is it now? What's going on now? But typically they do every, I believe it's 1,500 feet, they do core borings, and in between there, every 500 feet, they do cone penetrometer testing, CPTs. And so that can get extremely expensive really quickly, especially for a 48-mile levee system like ours. So Dr. Dunn is working on getting as wide of a spacing as he can get them to pallet in the New Orleans district. And he was pretty excited. He thought this $3 million would definitely cover that. So I think that's going to be a great use of that funding because, Joe Paciola is here. He can kind of back up that our biggest hurdle has been the geotech group at the New Orleans district. That everything that we submit, every turn we take, they're the ones that seem to have some kind of objection. So I think this will satisfy their concerns and prove, what we've known all along, that our levees are safe and stable and reliable. So just going to be waiting for that to come through and appropriated, but we'll keep y'all updated as that progresses. And that's my report. So any questions, I'll take them.
Any questions for Nick? Okay, thank you, Nick. Moving on, CPRA, Daniel, anything to report?
No, not today.
All right, good. Corps of Engineers, they didn't make it today. Project Engineers, Paciola. Joe?
Yes, on the La Rose Lock project, we're continuing to work with Nick and the parish on getting more funding for the project. That includes primarily FEMA at this time. They've asked for more hydraulic studying, which we're undertaking right now. We plan on having more meetings with the parish's FEMA consultant to discuss scope of work for that hydraulic study, but it is moving along. On Section E North levee improvements, construction site specialties, the contractor, he's been working lately pretty steadily. The weather in the last week or two has kind of got him. He can work when he can. So like the rain tomorrow, the next day is going to shut him down for a couple of days. But whenever he has a chance, he has been working lately, which has been good. They are working on primarily hauling material from the south to the north. So Construction Site Specialties has submitted pay application number 11 in the amount of $199,374.74, and we do recommend you pay that.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation of engineer to pay construction site specialist pay application number 11, amount of $199,374.74. Moved by Brian, second by Brett. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
And see, we have Blake in the Blake Campo in the audience. He's been working, taking the material that Construction Site Specialties is dumping and then putting that on the crown of the levee and shaping it to the levee section that we want. Right now, he's working on the southern end, working towards the north. And he's roughing it in the crown at about a +15. And then as we go, we'll see how much material we have. And if we have to cut it down a little bit, we'll cut it down a little bit. But his crews are doing a really good job. The results are really, really good. So we do have pay application number 2 in the amount of $57,745 even to Campo and Sons, and I do recommend you pay that.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation, engineer. Pay application number 2 in the amount of $57,745 to Campo and Sons. Moved by Max, second by Scott. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
On the A East levee improvements, all the project plans and specs are complete, all the engineering calculations are done. We were asked to go, we did get approval from CPRA on our design and our plans. So we were asked to go by the Corps of Engineers through their 408 permit review. We've submitted all the geotechnical calculations to the Corps, their geotechnical group. They really haven't had any comments back to us yet. They're asking us to do an environmental assessment analysis, which is quite arduous, and Nick and I have been working on trying to get them to relieve some of those requirements for us, because I think that, and Nick, he can chime in, but if we have to go through this environmental assessment every time we want to lift the levee, this is going to add a lot of time and a lot of extra money to what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think in the end, kind of like how we've mentioned this before, that depending on what happens with this levee recertification, if we are issued the after the fact 408s, and in the end, if we get updated 100-year storm levels, we need to wait and see if we're going to be eligible for any future Corps funding for construction. Because if not, we're not going to be getting any more Corps funding for construction, and it's not going to negatively affect our ability to, get flood insurance, or it's not going to negatively affect our flood insurance rates, then there's really no benefit for us to be considered a federal project. And the next time we have a WRDA bill, we may be going to Congress to deauthorize us. Because if we're not a federal project, then whatever we want to do, we just go do it. Which would be a lot simpler than what Joe's kind of outlined that we're being forced to do right now. So we'll see how that plays out.
But we're still trying to work with the Corps to give them what they want at this time, so we'll continue to do that until it becomes, I guess, not feasible. So the next project is the repairs to the timber fender and the LaRose floodgate. Crosby moved in and they completed the project in the last 2 weeks. So that's done. And the emergency gate closure at the LaRose floodgate, we put our plans out to bid. We actually accepted 2 bids. TLP Construction Company, LLC, was the low bidder in the amount of $140,000 even. They're the company that worked with us on repairing the south floodgate, and they did a really good job. So this is going to involve putting 2 winches in, one on each side on the concrete structure, and then in the case of emergency where you can't close the gates with the existing machinery, you'll be able to hook onto it with these winches and force them to close, so you don't flood the whole thing. So
we do need a resolution accepting that bid.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation, engineer, to accept the bid from TLP Construction. Moved by Matt, second by Monty. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed.
thank you.
Thank you, Joe. GIS, Mr. John Plato.
Merry Christmas. Our Hayes retention project is progressing along. We're basically ready to start advertising as soon as the servitudes are received. Ryan is working on that. The D North Ramp Lift project, we will begin advertising for that project this week. Take bids right before y'all January meeting, so y'all can award it at that point. The reconnection of the Breton Canal to by Lafourche project is still ongoing. The gates themselves, the rear gates, probably will February before they'll actually be delivered. The contractor's going to have everything other than the gates and some earthwork done probably in the next week or so. So we'll stop his contract time at that point until the gates come in. When the gates come in, all he's got to do is put them in and then move the dirt out from the front. They have a pay application number 4 in the amount of $179,490.72 that we have recommended that y'all go ahead and pay.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation of engineer. Pay application number 4 to Garden Environmental, $179,490.72. Moved by Scott, second by Gavin. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
And finally, the D-South flood wall at Crawfish Farms Phase 3. Sea Level is the contractor on this one. They have moved to the site and started to work. They've pulled out the HESCO baskets and the concrete in the middle. We have actually found, for sure on the west side, where the Schwess House boat is, that there was more sheet piled down there than we thought there was. So that will take some adjustments, but we plan on just putting the cap in the top sheet pile where they have existing sheet pile, and then where they didn't, we'll just continue with the plan we had for that phase. It may or may not cost y'all any more, but if it costs y'all more, it's because y'all will have more excess material in the form of steel sheet piles that the contractor will not need. And we'll have that change order for y'all probably next month. That's it.
That's it. Any questions for John?
Okay, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Christmas. You didn't go to us that much. I said Merry Christmas.
Okay,
You didn't
Angela
go to us.
is on, and Neil?
All right, on the C North levee maintenance, that contractor, Compo and Sons, is finalizing some stockpile reshaping to dress off a small segment of levee. The next project is the C South flood side repairs and levee maintenance. That contractor, again, is Compo and Sons. They're continuing to work on the berm, side slopes, and crown section of this levee. We do have their invoice number 1349 in the amount of $31,027.50 that we recommend for payment.
All right, you've heard the recommendation, engineer, to pay Compo and Sons invoice 1349, amount of $31,027.50. Moved by Mr. Rowland, second by Brad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
Okay, also on the same levy segment, we have invoice number 1350 from Compo and Sons for $3,467.50, and we do recommend payment of that.
Okay, we've heard the recommendation of the engineer to pay Compo and Sons invoice 1350, amount of $3,467.50. Moved by Monty, second by Brad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
All right, the next levy segment is the B North levy maintenance. That contractor, New Gym Construction LLC, which is Nick Walker, is working on that protected side berm for the levee. We're recommending approval of his invoice number 1042 in the amount of $21,850.
All right, you've heard the recommendation of our engineer to pay Nick Walker. New Gym? Okay. Invoice 1042, the amount of $21,850. Moved by Matt, second by Brian. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed.
Okay, and the last project is Section F berm improvements. That contractor, Sea Level Construction, has completed all the work on the project to improve that protected side berm. The substantial completion was approved at the November meeting. We're currently in the clear lien period, so he should have a clear lien certificate back for either the January or February meeting. And at that time, we'd have his retainage invoice for $198,348.31. So that'll be probably January or February that we'll be ready for that. That's it.
Any question for Neil?
Thank you.
Okay, Delta Coast. Anything to report? Okay.
Not too much to report, but so Ms. just asked that I report the Retail Pipeline crossing. We plan to, I think, go to bid hopefully next week on that, from what I was told. That's at the pipeline on Retail with the flood wall, and also with the instrumentation and monitoring. So just to give you all a little bit of a background on that, I think in mid-November, there was our proposal was approved to do the work with you guys. We did receive a quote from YSI for $190,000, and that includes the Golden Meadow, LaRose, floodgates, and lock, and the six pump stations I think included in that quote. But we're trying to have that, I guess, that intergovernmental agreement completed by the end of the year in order to keep that YSI proposal valid, I think. So that's the idea, I guess, for that. And that's pretty much it, guys. That's all I have.
Any questions for Kyle? I appreciate you coming, Kyle.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that. Thanks. Okay, moving on, All South, Stevie?
Couple of quick reports for the board member, Stevie Smith with All South. First one is our Reach K Terrace project. The terrace repairs are complete. Just to refresh everybody's memory, that's work that was actually done by the Terrebonne Levee District as your contractor. Worked with Angela and them to prepare an invoice to submit to this board. That invoice is not prepared yet, but when it is, we'll bring it, I guess, in January for you guys to pay that. I don't have an idea about how much that's going to be yet, Nick, but they're supposed to be working it up right now. But the actual work itself is complete. The other project is our work on Reach K South section, which is from Pointe-aux-Chenes going north to that first water control structure. So that work is complete on the south section. So we got a levee from Pointe-aux-Chenes going north to the first water control structure of about up to +11, which is a significant improvement. Then the center section, which is between the two water control structures out there, the center section was under construction until about the end of last month. And then we've stopped. Frankly, we ran out of money. You may remember that. We had raised a little money from this board, from the North Lafourche board. Lafourche Parish, Terrible Parish had all chipped in basically $250,000 for that effort. And we exhausted all those dollars, so we stopped because we ran out of money. We did not get the entire center section up to 11 feet. Probably about half of it is up to 11. And the other half of it ranges from 10 down to some low parts are really at about 9. So as recently as this morning, I was having some conversations with a few of folks to try and raise about $1.5 million for that purpose, not coming from this board, let's emphasize that, from other sources, right, Nick? Good news. But I do expect that that's going to mature in January, where we'll get back out there and get the rest of it up to 11. And that's it.
Okay, any questions for Stevie? Thanks, Steve. Okay, legal, Mitch is not here. Do you have anything, Nick, on that, on the legal permit? Board attorney's not here. Finance committee, Lonnie?
Mr. President, the Finance Committee met earlier today and approved all invoices as presented. Just need a motion from the board to approve.
Okay, you heard the recommendation of Finance Chairman to approve and pay all invoices. Moved by Brett, second by Mr. Rowland. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Personnel committee.
All right, Personnel Committee is going to shelve this. We didn't have a quorum, so we shelved this to the January meeting.
Okay. Okay. Any old business? Any old business? Any old business? Any new business?
Can I address?
Okay. Sure.
You'll have to unanimously adopt the address of the board.
Do we have to?
We might deviate a little bit.
I just came, Joseph Forgeron, State Representative, District 54. I came to listen, and I just had some questions that I wanted to, or comments to make. So, first of all, the people building the pond by the wall with the Army Corps of Engineers, that's, you know, if your wife asks you to scratch an itch and build a pond, it can get you into a little bit of trouble. I feel sorry for those people, and I'm glad to not be involved. And I think you're gonna take care of that.
And I think it's important to note, I mean, they didn't fight, and I don't think there's any kind of fine or anything that's gonna be imposed on them. They just had to fill it in back, you know, fill the hole back in. So it's, you know, there wasn't any kind of huge legal issue. But please don't dig by the levee.
On the east side note that Joe, you brought up where Army Corps is asking for more stuff, I'd like to just understand what it is that's changing, you know what I'm talking about? Y'all said that in the future that might be able to, I just want to be able to have a little bit higher level, technical level of what they're asking out of the ordinary on
So
that.
it's not necessarily out of the ordinary, it's what we should, quote unquote, should have been doing all along by
Okay.
getting Section 408 approvals.
To
So-
have it being in an approved system, or?
Because anytime you're going to occupy or alter a federal project, whether it's a levee or a waterway or anything, a structure, you need to get a Section 408 approval from the district that usually coordinates with the division. for them to approve. Make sure you're not gonna be causing damage to the project or risk public safety. And so the 408 process, you know, you have to submit your plans and specifications for the project itself. Here, because part of this project includes excavating material for, you know, for placement in the levee, part of that is when the Corps does their own work, they have their pre-approved borrow pit locations that have already been environmentally cleared, have gone through the whole National Environmental Policy Act review. And so since we were looking to get a local pit established, because the closest one that I'm aware of is River Birch, you know, near West Vigo, which is a very long way to try to move material down here. So we were trying to get something much closer, much cheaper to transport. But the ARPEDS group in New Orleans, which is real estate, environmental, I don't remember all the letters of that acronym, but they're the ones that are requiring this environmental assessment, not for the placement, because the levee itself footprint has already been cleared.
For the removal in the
For the
borrow.
removal of wherever we end up getting the material from.
And that hasn't been decided yet?
That hasn't been decided yet, because typically what we do is we put our specifications into our contracts as to what qualities the material needs to have in terms of organics, you know, and moisture content and everything. And we put that on the contractor. And that helps us because then it allows the contractor to go out and locate his own material. It's cheaper for him, cheaper for us, everybody wins, and we can get it done much more quickly. Here, because it's not already cleared, the Corps wants us to identify the location we want to get the material from first, clear it environmentally, and then they're going to give us the approval. Now, I know through conversations that I had last week with Terrebonne Levee District, they've been allowed to change that order a little bit to where they add more time to the contract to where they can award the contract, and then the contractor can then go clear his own site. But it does have to be in a commercial pit. So as long as you have sold 1 yard of dirt, you can be classified as a commercial pit. What I then sent to the Corps last week was the A East Bayou Water Retention Project that GIS engineered for us. That was a project inside of our levee system that butts up against the federal alignment. So when we submitted everything to the Corps gave us a letter of no objection. Go ahead and do it. So, and there we referenced the 1972 environmental assessment that was done for our entire system, where it says that everything inside the system has already been cleared. Now, that may satisfy all the federal requirements. We may still need to do a quick cultural resources study. That's not a big deal.
Okay.
So I sent that report over to the Corps, referenced the Bayou Water Retention Project, and I've asked, what's the difference here? Why are you requiring this extremely onerous process to go through for A East and A West when you didn't require it for the A East Bayou Water Retention? And I haven't gotten a response.
That's good. More than I wanted to know, but you got to exactly the point where you're trying to inject common sense into the Corps, and they're just starting the process.
Wish me luck on that.
That's the usual thing. Okay. You brought up in your executive director report, the monitoring, that's the cooperative endeavor agreement for the monitoring stations.
Right.
And is that what Delta Cruz brought up? Okay, so all in the same right there. On pump 4, right behind my house, a little selfish importance there, but thank you for taking care of all the pumps and at least razooing what you needed to do to get 3 up and running, should we? The weir, and I've been watching the weir progress go, and John, sounds like everything but the gates. Gates should be delivered on time, no problem, downstream, things from China, nothing like that. Okay. Because I know sometimes government projects, Golden Meadow Bridge, take a lot longer than expected. So I just want to make sure in February we're going to see the gates delivered. Good?
Yeah, all right.
Very good, very good. We don't talk about Reach L. Reach K we talked about, but anybody works on Reach L in here, any of the engineers? And I'm worried about any update on the Williams pipeline?
So that's what Kyle was just speaking on.
Okay.
That The Levee District plans to put that out for bid, I think as early as next week. There's some questions that CPRA still has that being answered, but it seems to be going real well, so I think that's gonna be out for bid. And the plan is by next hurricane season, there's gonna be some structure out there, it's not gonna be complete, but some flood protection is gonna be out there to close up that gap.
Okay, and any word from Williams as to whether or not they're gonna do anything with the pipeline prior to? So they're just, as their official position is them holding with what they got and moving, and us moving forward, building on top of what they already have there.
Building a wall basically around
Okay.
the pipeline's gonna penetrate the wall.
Got it. All right. And lastly, has the Lafourche Levee Board ever made a resolution regarding the mid-Barataria sediment diversion, to your knowledge? All right. Would that be something that y'all would give consideration to writing a resolution in support of the continuation of the mid-Barataria sediment diversion project?
We could bring it up at the executive committee meeting if y'all are open to that.
I'd like for y'all to look into that, or give that consideration. And I believe that's it. That's all my questions. And I appreciate all the work y'all been doing. And we had elections, and we had a special session on tax reform. And the special session on tax reform, y'all get to vote on, get to learn more about what it is, and vote it up or down come the March election. That's it. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer if anybody's got any.
I want to compliment our state representative on the terraces between Fouchon and Cheyenne.
Right.
They planted, I don't know how many thousands.
10,000 mangroves.
10,000 mangroves, and our rep was out there Friday after Thanksgiving, I think it was, the cold, when that cold weather.
Wednesday staging,
Yeah.
Thursday all day, Friday all day, Saturday,
Yeah.
and yesterday, putting the remaining mangroves, they couldn't put it back in the ground for the next stage that's actually closer to the beach. They haven't finished the terraces yet.
And I saw Buster Avera and his group were helping.
Yes.
You know,
A lot of people from Loop, a lot of people from
Yeah.
Shell, a lot of people from Danos.
That's important to us.
Yeah, a lot of people came, and that does do a lot for storm surge attenuation. And we still do have Restore Retreat, is what I did that as part of, and we do have a project to plant roseaux on between Bessons and the Apache Forum on any areas that are open to water and don't have anything. So we're still working on getting that done as well. Thank you, Derek.
All right.
Much appreciated.
Attorney's not here, so no executive session. Entertain a motion to adjourn? Matt? Amani? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. All right.